Hey, so after a couple years I'm back with this FPS game. So far I've made some basic features, but since then I've worked on a few things, such as opening the project for the first time in 2 years, and I certainly didn't make it easy to come back to with this unorganised mess. I've got an animations folder, but I don't even have animations, and I was just too lazy to drag a material into the materials folder, and I guess I just gave it with the rest. Well, it's a good thing I've grown over the past 2 years, but let's create a folder for the scripts. I had one job. I also sorted out some file names since Particle System and Particle System 1 aren't very helpful. And once I got into the game, I noticed my camera would sometimes snap, but when I tried to record it, the issue just stopped. I still made an FPS counter since I was curious to see if that was related. Might need to adjust that. Also, got to love how many frames I'm getting. Although that does mean any bad gameplay is either because I'm bad at my own game, or my code is bad, but I lose regardless of which I pick. So we'll just leave it at that. Next up, I decided to revamp the classes since they were a mess. Here's a Microsoft Paint plan that I made. Don't worry if it makes no sense, because I don't even think I understood it at the time of making it. And no, I didn't even stick to this plan. I just worked on making controllers and prefabs, and apparently instant death when you spawn in. Fixed the player, but somehow lost the gun. Fixed the gun, but broke the recoil. I wonder how high it'll go. Eventually I sorted out all the problems, so now I can get to work on more exciting things, like reducing the recoil recovery time, since I kept mistiming my shots. Some might say skill issue, but as the dev, I call it a player comfort enhancement. An actual accessibility feature that I added is crosshair scaling, so the players can choose their preferred reticle size, with 8 options available, although I can't imagine number 8 giving you a competitive advantage. I might add some more shapes, but I'll come back to them later. Anyways, I decided to give the gun its own class, so it would be easier to fine-tune any recoil changes. But as you can see, I seem to have lost my gun again. Wait a minute. I thought that was just a speck of dust on my screen, but no, turns out that's my gun. I think it was caused by mixing up global and local transformations, since the gun is a child object of the player. Anyways, I got that sorted, and with that going so well, I decided to also refactor the player class. Okay, luckily it looked worse than it actually was, so it wasn't too bad to correct. And thanks to these changes, I got to work on creating a new recoil system with a faster recovery time. And this is what it looks like. Except I seem to have a clip 4 days later called New Recoil 2, so I guess this is how it looks now. And I just can't seem to escape the bugs. To be honest, I probably couldn't make a better inspect animation even if I tried. Look at this. It's even got multiple animations. Then I took a break from the project since Brecky's game jam was starting. I've already made a video about that, so let's get back to the FPS game. Except work and uni got busy, and it ended up being a 3-month break. But hey, better than 2 years. Now which one was it? Don't worry about my version control. No, I'm not scared of Git, you are. Note to self, make sure your git ignore file is set up properly, otherwise your browser stops responding because 5,000 files will be updated instead of 3. Oh, and for any non-technical British viewers, no, I'm not talking about unpleasant people. Hang on, is that what my mum means when she calls me a lazy git? Okay, so we're 3 minutes into the video, and my game looks almost identical to how it started. Oh, what are those, you ask? Those rays of light are supposed to be bullet trails coming out from my gun, which they're not. I managed to sort out the end positions, and eventually the start position too, although it was a tiny bit too high. Also not entirely sure when, but I designed a new gun model. Plus the bullet trails were working, so I was pretty satisfied. I was until I tried shooting whilst turning. The issue becomes more apparent when moving as well. Since the player moves so fast, the trails don't look like they spawn from the muzzle, even though they do. I did look up a potential solution, where you can lerp the trails to slightly follow the gun position, but they were either too unnatural when standing still, or too slow when moving. My guess is most fast-paced FPS games don't use a static line renderer, but instead use a projectile-based trail. So what I did next was not that, and instead procrastinated by fixing a different issue, where gun trails were going through walls. This is caused by, actually let's whip out paint, because why not? So we've got the player and the gun, which is currently in a hipfire position, and here's the wall that's blocking the way. Let's say this is our target. When we shoot, the actual bullet collision is based on the player's camera, which is the head, and this isn't blocked by the wall. But the visual trail starts from the gun, which is blocked by the wall, and that is why it appears we shoot through the wall. I also came across this nice video covering this topic, which may have a better visualization than I do. but I'll let you decide. To sum it up, most games will either let the fake bullet go through walls, block the bullet even if the crosshair is on target, or show the player that a wall is in the way. What did I do? I just didn't spawn a bullet trail if it gets blocked. I'm still deciding if this was smart or just lazy. So with that done, we go back to the previous problem, but this time using moving projectiles. The keyword is moving, so let's try that again. Well, if you look closely, they are at least moving. Here I also made a sad discovery. Previously the game had a bug where dark mode would somehow be activated after restarting, but now it doesn't do that anymore. The worst part is, the game doesn't even work after restarting, so that's something I'll have to fix at some point. After realising I got distracted again, I went and fixed the bullet projectiles. Something I did notice was the actual raycast collision is instant, but the visual trails take time to travel from the gun to the end target. So to hide the delay, I just sped up the projectiles. Another adjustment I made was not spawning the projectiles if you're too close to a solid target, since it looks weird. I didn't expect to be making so many design decisions when adding bullet projectiles, which, by the way, I spent days working on bullet trails you won't even notice when ADS'd. And speaking of ADS, it looks trash, especially when compared to an example, so I'm going to try work on that. The main problem is that it looks flat, despite being 3D. Lighting seems to play a part in emphasizing the gun shape, but I don't know how to do that, so I just changed the colours and the shape instead. And while I was at it, I removed any unnecessary colliders from the gun model. Got to keep the game optimised, says the person who has another 100 separate colliders elsewhere. Also, somehow brown in the editor means green in the game, and it doesn't seem to be the camera, nor the light, so I'm not sure what causes it. Apart from a vague memory, where 3 years ago I added a blue tint to something, so thanks to me from back then. I did find that changing the material's metallic property does bring it closer to what I expected, so eventually I settled on this, which is definitely nicer than the block I started this video with. The last thing I wanted to add for this devlog was wall running, so what I did was accidentally make a shotgun. I also looked into creating tags for the floor and the wall, but I realised for my case, raycast would just be the quicker option to check when a player leans against the wall. Believe it or not, you can't wall run by face planting the wall. And then I adjusted recoil again, because I don't know how to stay focused on one task. The next step to wall running is to check if the player is grounded. Currently I'm using Unity's character controller component, and I found out that the isGrounded method is bugged, and has been for the last 5 years according to Stack Overflow. The fix was to add an extra bit of downwards velocity to stick to the ground, but that then messes up with the gravity when falling off a ledge, and I didn't feel like remaking the character controller from scratch, so I needed to find a solution to the solution. And my new approach is basically, so if one condition doesn't work, we'll just add another. I'm not really sure why it works, but it does. And while I was at it, I added some terminal velocity too. Oh, the gun trails are going through the wall again. Definitely not because I rearranged them game objects. Well, I found the cause. See here? This is where the bullet starts, and this is where the actual bullet ends, but this is where the visual trail thinks it's supposed to go. So I fixed that, and now we can go back to wall running. I set a minimum height to trigger the action, and now wall running is working. Gotta love spending more time fixing bugs than actually adding the feature. With that going so well, I decided to go a step further and add wall jumping, except it's more like wall climbing at the moment. 3 minutes later, I unlocked Minecraft Creative Mode, and also got some sort of wall jump working, if you'd call it that. The next issue was managing acceleration in the air. I realised the player's WASD horizontal movement overrides the wall jump momentum, so I had to figure out how to smooth it in the air, which after getting stuck on one axis because I put Y instead of Z, I managed to put everything together to not only have a wall run, but also a fully working wall jump, and then I added some long walls into the level to test it out. But before I can leave satisfied, you might have noticed my gun clips through the walls, and that bothers me. So the final change is adding a second camera to specifically render the gun in front of the terrain. I may have forgotten to remove the original rendered gun, but that's easy to fix. I added some debugging rays to the player, and I don't know why, but I just found this clip of the player bouncing around really funny for some reason. I think I'm just going insane, but that's okay, because here's the final result, which combined with everything else feels a lot nicer to play, especially with the new movement options. At the moment this is more of a foundation rather than a game with a goal, so I'll need to come up with ideas for the game going forwards. Apologies if you got dizzy from all the times I got distracted. Here's a quick summary of the whole video. 5 months ago I started with this, And now I have this. Thanks for watching.